I do hate having the big picture up there. My name is Bill Gallop. I'm the Apple Technical Manager, Mac Consultant Manager, and I also take on responsibility for our mobile offering here at Insight. And what I wanted to do is just give you a little bit of background as to where I come into this. I've been working in the Apple reseller channel for something like 20 years. And throughout all that time, I've been supporting and deploying Macs primarily on Windows networks. So today is an opportunity for me to hopefully share some of the things I've learnt and give you some ideas and some takeaway for how you can incorporate Apple products and technologies into your infrastructure. So what am I going to do? First thing, I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. What I'm not going to do is tell you that Apple is the answer to everything. I'm not going to get into a Mac versus PC war. I'm not going to try and sell you anything. Today's all about information. So what am I going to do? Well, the key points for me today are to hopefully address some concerns that you may have. You've obviously come along for a good reason. You want to know about integrating Apple. You want to address some concerns. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to give you a whole load of questions. There's no one answer. You'll probably go away with more questions than you came here with. But I'll give you some food for thought, and I'll give you some comfort around those questions and those problems you may have. But I'll start out asking a question that maybe gets asked a lot of people. And that's why Apple? Why are you considering adopting Apple products and technologies? Well, there's a number of reasons. Firstly, everybody's using iPads. Yep, there's a lot of iPads out there. You get a lot of demand, so maybe it's something that you ought to be looking at. You may be looking at doing a Windows 7 or potentially later in the year, next year, a Windows 8 migration. And you've got to do a lot of changes to your infrastructure, potentially upgrading servers and what have you. So you want to do some due diligence. You want to think, should I look at alternative operating systems? So there's a good reason for looking at Apple. You may have heard some good messages around stability. You may think that Apple is a stable platform. I'm fed up of dealing with malware, etc. So let's go and look at an Apple platform. And one of the benefits of Apple actually having quite a reduced set of hardware that they work with is that the developers are writing to a known set of hardware. And alternative operating systems that support just about anything, you've got to write device drivers to support graphics cards and network cards and what have you. And I'm not sure if it's a true fact, but it's said that something like 60% of crashes on Windows are down to device driver problems. Yep. So the fact that Apple don't make particularly many products is to me a real benefit because it means they can focus on a particular supported set of hardware. There's a total cost of ownership argument to be made. Whilst it's true that Macs may be a little bit more expensive to buy, if you're looking just at the hardware, than a PC. And I'm talking at a premium branded PC. I'm not comparing, say, a MacBook Air against a $299 laptop. There's obviously a different type of product there. And those $299 laptops suit a lot of markets. But I'm talking total cost of ownership. I'm talking what the residual value of the product is after you've sweated it for 3 or 4 years. I'm talking about the support. And that comes back to the stability argument. A more stable platform needs less support, so you've got a lower cost for supporting that product. You may have peer pressure. Well, I say peer pressure. It tends to be one of two things. It tends to be the senior management pressure, when the MD or somebody wanders in with an iPad and says, we're using this, you're supporting it. Or it's employee pressure. And this happens when you get, well, people call them digital natives. Kids who've grown up and all they've ever used is computers in the home. You say that they mainly know CDs rather than LPs. Well, probably in the very short future, we will have kids coming out of school, coming out of colleges, who've never used CDs. It's all been download for them. Yep. So they want to use the products and technologies that they have at work. At home, they want to use them at work. And it's more than want, they expect to be able to use them. So you want the top talent, you've got to provide them with the resources they need. You may be looking at bring your own device or choose your own device strategies. And that kind of flows out of some of the other stuff. If you want to be able to support the devices that the senior management or the staff want, you want to use the TCO argument and whatever. So you then get into a bring your own device thing. And I am not going to deny this last one. They simply look better. And in some businesses, and in some segments of all businesses, that is an important thing. If you turn up at a pitch, at a client meeting, with a tatty $299 laptop or a MacBook Air, you'll probably get taken an awful lot more seriously with a MacBook Air, unless, of course, you're going in and talking the message about reducing the initial purchase cost. Yeah? So it's horses for courses. That's what I said. I'm not getting into a Mac PC argument. Different products. In fact, you've all got your own reasons, or else, frankly, you wouldn't be here. That's why you've come in here. And I'll give you a few numbers as well that kind of justify what's happening with Apple. These figures come from Gartner. They're not insight figures. They look at what the UK personal computer market is doing. Now, over the past year, and this is quarter-on-quarter change, yeah, so this is all about growth. And this is the market as a whole. Little bit of, well, I was going to say a little bit of growth, but a little bit less decline going through Q3, but then dropping off again into Q4. We'll look at some of the big players. That's what Dell did. That's what HP did. And in general, most of the players in the market are seeing decline, with a few exceptions. Not one exception, a few exceptions, but that's what Apple did. Apple saw growth throughout the whole, and that is a very tiny growth, but it is growth in Q2. And in fact, worldwide, Apple have seen something like 23, 25 quarters of straight growth. And that's, having gone through the recession, they've been growing all the time. Very easy, you may say, to grow when you're not selling many. Yeah, if I sell 100 and next week I sell 102, I've grown. Hey, so let's look at market share. And this is market share over the past 2 years. Well, that's what Dell did. Kind of stable, bit of a drop. That's HP, not bad performance there. And what's Apple doing? What's their share of the UK personal computer market look like? Well, it is lower. I'm not going to deny it's lower than the other guys, but over that 2-year period, they've nearly doubled. And if you look at the trajectory for Apple against some of the other major manufacturers, it's not going to be too long before Apple are challenging someone like Dell for market share. Okay, so that's a significant change. Now, you may be sitting there saying, well, that's okay, that's all iPad. I mean, you've got seven quarters or so of iPad in there. That's what that's doing. Well, these figures from Gartner are what exclude what they call media tablets. That basically means that doesn't include iPad. iPad changes things quite drastically. In the first weekend of the new iPad being on sale, Apple sold 3 million units. If you include media tablets in the figures for personal computers, globally, Apple shipped more than HP. So that's a very significant change. And yes, a lot of those devices are going out into the hands of consumers, but as I've already mentioned, those consumers are going to want more and more times to use them in business. They're either working for somebody now, they're in school or college, they'll be working for somebody in the next few years. And they'll expect to be able to use devices like that in their office. So bring your own device. People talk about it a lot. I'm going to give you an example, and this is an example from Citrix. It's one of my favorite ones because it's a company that you may not perceive as being a big Mac user. And they did a bring your own device program that ran through about 1,000 employees. And what Citrix had to say for themselves was, with those 1,000 employees, give them a free choice. And what happened? Well, they saved about 20% of their support costs by using a bring your own device. But the big thing is, of that 1,000 or so people, when given a choice, 46% of them chose a Mac. Citrix's response? Quite a surprise. And anecdotally, that's what happens when you give employees choices. It's between about 30 to 50% tend to choose Apple. And I guess that may well be why a number of you are sitting here. That you're thinking, well, people are going to be wanting to use Macs, or they're going to be wanting to use iPads in my business. I don't support that at the moment. What am I going to do? Well, my first golden rule, my only golden rule here, I guess, is that if you want a PC experience, buy a PC. Yeah? I am not, and I said earlier on, I'm not going to get into a Mac versus PC war. If you want a locked down, corporate controlled desktop that you manage and do everything the same way as you've always done it, buy a PC. A Mac is a Mac. Use it as a Mac. An iPad is an iPad. It's not a Mac. It works differently. It does different things. It's not a PC. Don't treat those computing resources like something they're not, because if you do, two things happen. First of all, you lose the reason why people wanted to use it in the first place. Yeah? People want to use a Mac because they want to work on a Mac, the way Macs work. They use an iPad because they want to use an iPad. If you try and lock it down and treat it like your corporate PC, they will not want to use it. And what they'll probably try and do is use their own devices anyway. Yeah? So you'll either get negativity and resistance from the users and your lack of the reason you bought the product in the first place. So I'll come back to what I said. If you want a PC experience, buy a PC. So, some concerns that you may have, and these are the headline bullet points that we put on the website here. So, reasons that we may be sort of here. Firstly is that maybe Macs can't be managed properly, they don't play well with Windows servers, iPads don't fit into your corporate infrastructure, you don't know how to manage them, you don't know how to deploy them, and that Apple is difficult to support. To me, those are kind of the four key messages that come back about Apple. And I'll take a quick sidebar, and this comes into a Mac is a Mac and treat them all differently. It's a question for you. How do you see your users? What's your perception of your users? Do you see them as kids, like to muck about? They are quite techno-savvy, they'll fiddle with things, they're a bit geeky. Anyone know who this is? That's Typhoid Mary. She spread viruses throughout the USA. She was just a carrier. She was a cook. Killed an awful lot of people through the spread of typhus. Or perhaps they're those annoying know-it-alls. Is that how you see your users? Or in reality, are they just like you? Yep. Your users are no different to you. They want to get on and do their job. They want the technology to get out of the way. We'll flip it round. How do they perceive you as the IT strategy, the IT support, whatever? Are you the good guy, following the rules, making sure that everybody gets on well? Are you stopping them doing what they want to do? Or do they perceive you in a slightly more negative way? Well, again, the truth is that you're just like them. Yeah? Your users may cause you problems, but at the end of the day, everybody needs to work together. You need to support the users, they need to work with you. It all needs to be a nice happy family, shall we say. Here's a quote. And I think this is very true about managing computers, that it's a race to find the best idiot. And so far, the universe is winning. Whatever you do, people will get round it. They'll find a way. It may be accidental. It may be on purpose. So the best thing to do is to work with people. Ask yourself, do you see everything like vandals at the gates, or are you open for business? Yeah, it's a change of mindset, a lot of this is. About integrating Macs into the enterprises is about a change of mindset. I talked to people earlier on about this. You need to start thinking about things differently. So the question on Macs can't be managed properly, well, the first things I would ask you is, what do you want to manage and why do you want to manage it? These things pop up an awful lot. Well, back to the users being digital natives. Why do they want to do this? Yeah? Is it because your users can't be trusted, they'll muck around and do things on their own time, in your time? in which case IT is not the solution for a personnel problem? Or is it because they actually see some value in these things? Is it that they need to go on to YouTube because they want to do some self-study, they want to do some training, and a lot of companies put product promotional material on YouTube these days. Dropbox is a real killer. Yeah? Why do people always use Dropbox? Well, most of the time it's because they need to get things from their laptop, their desktop to their mobile device, and they don't have a mechanism to do that. So my challenge there is understand why people want to use these things and put in a supported alternative. Yeah, if they're using Skype because it's the most convenient way to video conference with their customers, well, you can do things like that with Link. You can do things like that through Cisco. There are other ways to do the things that the users want to do. And what are the other things we may want to manage? Well, some of these, this isn't so much managing as provisioning. Yeah, the wallpaper bit, so many people want corporate wallpapers on their computers. And it's very nice. It makes everybody feel like they're all part of the team. And I'm not sure that anybody ever really appreciates it. But providing applications to users, providing printers and shares, those are about provisioning. They're not so much a management question as how do we enable the users to have access to these things. So the points on this one is really about understanding your users' needs, not just the needs of the business. Ideally, give them a supported alternative. If it's something that they're stepping outside of your business to use, find out why, find out what's the value, and find out how you can put something in there that you can manage. I mean, Dropbox I mentioned earlier on. Mozi have got a product in development. It's in beta at the moment, which is essentially Mozi's version of Dropbox. But it's something that you can then supply to your users as a corporate sanctioned product that you have the controls over, so you can give them the functionality without having the lack of control. So there's ways and means. Because, frankly, if you give them no reason to get around it, and users will attempt to get around things, generally if they don't understand why those controls are in place. So how do we then put policy out to machines? How do we allow users to authenticate and be part of our directory system? Well, logging onto the computer is a very basic thing, and the way that normally works with Macs is through Apple's own servers, through Lion Server, but in most businesses, most enterprises, Lion Server isn't what you've got out there. But the good news is that we can quite happily authenticate against Active Directory, against Novell's Open Enterprise Server, and even against Open LDAP. So the Macs will quite happily take their authentication information from these guys, so that you can have your corporate directory structure in place and allow your users to log on and authenticate against those. And to manage policy, well, the first thing is we can set up what's known as a parallel directory. Some people call it a golden triangle. And that's where we put in an Apple server alongside something like Active Directory. And using Apple's Workgroup Manager product, we can then allow the users to take their authentication from Active Directory, but we apply policy from Workgroup Manager running on an Apple server. So we can manage and we can provision services through those. The alternative is to use Workgroup Manager against Active Directory. And in order to do that, you have to modify the schema of Active Directory. And I know that when I say things like that, most AD admins run screaming, so I tend not to use that one that often. You could use an alternative client, Admit Mac from Thursby. What that does is allows you to use Workgroup Manager to set policies, and it actually stores the data that's used by the Macs in the sysvol of the Active Directory server. So when the Mac logs on, they authenticate, and Admit Mac looks at the sysvol and pulls policy from there. Finally, another way of doing it is a tool such as Centrify. Centrify runs as a client on the Mac, but also as a plugin to Active Directory users and computers so that you can do the policy from there. And just to give you a little screenshot to show you what you can do with Centrify. If you're an AD admin, that looks familiar to you, I'm sure. And Centrify would allow you to set policy on the Macs through the same console that you use to set policy for your Windows computers. So from an admin point of view, there's no training of the user, of the administrator to use a different tool. It's the same tool that they use to admin their PCs. albeit they're setting different policies. And yeah, it will do Linux and other things as well. So you can bring those things into the authentication domain, have the same authentication, have policy coming out of the same point. So that makes management of the Mac much easier. Well, we say then also Macs don't play well with Windows servers. What servers do you want to connect to? Because if someone said to me Windows servers, I would think about Server 2003, Server 2008. Yep. To me, that's Windows servers. But when people say Windows servers, what they probably actually mean are these sort of things as well. Yeah? Exchange, SharePoint, Link. They're servers that run on top of the Windows server itself. Well, let's start off with file services. On Windows Server, Server 2003, Server 2008, well, the good news is that OS X Lion will talk directly to that. Lion will mount a CIFS SMB share, and it'll read and write that fine. Earlier versions of Windows Server also supported Apple's own AFP file service. It wasn't a particularly good client, and it was quite old. It had been around for quite some time. It was an old revision of it, had a number of issues with OS X. So in many ways, I'm glad that that's gone. But, and it's very true that Macs prefer to work with an AFP server than to work with an SMB or a CIFS server. And there's a good answer for that. And that's a product from Group Logic called Extreme ZIP. And that's an AFP server that will run on your Windows servers. And it even allows you to do things like AFP across a DFS cluster. So you can cluster them for shared storage, but still access them over AFP. So it's a very nice product for it, and additionally, it is a product that you have to sit on your Windows servers, but it gives you much better support for your Macs against the Windows file servers. So Exchange. Primarily Exchange Server 2010. There are support for 2007, 2003, etc. But let's focus on 2010. First thing is good news. The Mac OS out of the box will quite happily talk for mail, calendaring, and address books directly to 2010. It uses Exchange Web Services, and will go straight into there and integrate. But that's OK for the Mac. There's another product. And exactly the same is true of the iPad and the iPhone. So they'll use ActiveSync and talk to Exchange 2010 quite nicely. So you've got proper support there for your mail, calendar, and address books. Alternatives, you could use something like Office 365 if you wanted to, and Microsoft Office has got a mail client, and that's Outlook in the latest version, and that again will talk to Exchange Web Services. So we can quite happily talk to our mail and our calendaring services there. SharePoint. Not as many people use SharePoint as they should. It's a really good tool. I said I wasn't going to get into Mac PC arguments, so SharePoint is a great tool for collaboration and for storage of documents, etc. Now, this is a screenshot from Word for the Mac, Word 2011, and we can save straight to a SharePoint. We can open from SharePoint, so that talks quite nicely. What if we don't want to do necessarily a Word document? Well, there's a nice product called Share Plus. And that allows you to sign into SharePoint. So you can interact with SharePoint, load your documents, cache them locally if you need to. So obviously, if I'm on a laptop, I want to cache the documents that are on my SharePoint so I can take it away, work on it, and bring it back and sync. Fine on my Mac, also fine on my iPad. So that comes back to one of the challenges that people often throw at me. How do I get files from my iPad, or indeed my iPhone, onto my servers? Well, you can set up a WebDAV share on the user's home directory. iPads love working with WebDAV. Products like Pages and Keynote will read and write to WebDAV. There are other WebDAV clients available. There are CIFS clients as well. But SharePoint is a great product. So let's use a SharePoint client that sits on our iPad and again will cache those files. And when the user's connected up, we'll synchronize and get them the latest version on their local machine. So that's a nice product. Collaboration, there's Link Server. Well, what are we going to do about Link? Good news for you again. If you've got the Enterprise Edition of Office, and this is the one you get through licensing, one of the key differences between buying Office as a boxed product and buying Office as a volume license is you also get Link clients for the Mac. So you can do Link, you can do chats, you can do video conferences, you can do screen sharing through Link. Good, let's be mobile. And we'll use Link for the iPad. And if you really want to, we'll also use Link on our iPhone. So we can quite happily talk to our Windows file servers. We can talk to Active Directory and authenticate. We can get policy out to our Macs. We can talk to Exchange. We can talk to SharePoint. We can talk to Link. Next question, I guess, is about iPads. Do they fit a corporate infrastructure? Well, the first question on that is connectivity. How do we actually get them connected up? 802.1x, secure wireless networking, certificate-based, standard in iOS. So you can provision certificates out to the device, and they can then sign on to a secure wireless network. We can also do, out of the box, an SSL VPN. So if you're using a Cisco VPN that's just secured with a certificate, then we can do SSL VPN. And when you're doing that sort of a VPN, it also works with VPN on demand. So if I want to access a website that's within my walls, or it's another application that needs to have connectivity back to base, on the fly, the VPN will come up, I'll connect to it, and when I've finished, it'll drop again. Cisco's a good company for connectivity. And the first thing I'll mention on Cisco is if you want to do more than that basic SSL VPN, is Cisco AnyConnect. Cisco AnyConnect available for the iPad and the iPhone, so you could do an RSA authenticated connection through to your VPN. So that allows you then to get connection back again to the office for those secure documents across a secure connection. We can do conferencing, we can do WebEx, and also, here's a neat one, Cisco Jabber. So we can extend our voice over IP out to our iPhone. And that gets quite cute because data costs an awful lot less than a voice call. Voice calls are just data. So if we're using something like Cisco Jabber, I can make, with an iPod or an iPad in my office, I can make a call. I can make a call with Jabber on my iPhone, and when I get out of the office, I'm still connected up to my office network on my office phone on the same number, making internal calls over a data connection. So that's quite a nice way of connecting all those bits and pieces of the business together. But not everybody has a Cisco VPN. Maybe you've got Juniper. Well, Juniper have got a Junos client. F2 have got a client for their VPNs as well. So there's a number of different options for connecting up to the corporate network. And I think we've already talked about Exchange, SharePoint, and Link. So that really, I guess, covers off a big chunk of the connectivity. I was tempted to put legacy applications here, but I wasn't going to get into a Mac and Windows argument, so we'll say Windows applications. How do we get access to our Windows applications? Because you may have a lot of line of business apps that can't be mobilized, can't be made available directly onto an iPad or an iPhone. So first one I'll talk about is Citrix Receiver. Very nice product. With that, I can get access to desktop, I can get access to documents, etc. Citrix also support using an iPhone as a mouse. So I could have an iPad with the screen and an iPhone sat next to it and use it like a trackpad. So that's Citrix Receiver. You may well be a VMware house rather than a Citrix house. It's all right. VMware View does the same sort of job. So you've got options with both Citrix and VMware. That's Word running on an iPad. You may not be ready to be putting that sort of infrastructure in. You may be thinking, well, if I'm going to go mobile, I'm going to go iPad, I'm going to go cloud. Can anybody help me with that? Insight can, because they've got Insight Cloud. And that then allows us, and that's me logging in over Insight Cloud, and you can have there the virtual desktop, you can have hosted stuff, etc. No sales pitch, just tell you it's there. Okay. Native applications. I want to use my Word, my Excel, my PowerPoint documents. I don't want to go over the Citrix. I don't want to go over VMware or cloud because, I don't know, I'm at 30,000 foot in a plane, but I want to be able to work on a spreadsheet. Documents to go. In the Pro version, you get Word, Excel, and PowerPoint compatibility. In the non-Pro version, you get just Word and Excel. There are other products out there that do the same sort of job. And with those, I can then edit my spreadsheet, I can edit my Word documents on the fly, on my iPad, on my iPhone, and have compatibility with my colleagues who are using Windows desktops or laptops. So that's the story around Windows applications. Another part of the corporate is management. How do we look after those iPads? The question I asked a number of people today is, why do you want to manage them, and should you be managing them? Because there's a bit of a challenge sometimes, particularly if you're using user-owned devices. If I'm bringing my personal device into work, do I want to give you the ability to manage my device and wipe it if you want to? Which you may well have a very good reason for doing. It may be I'm leaving the business and you want to make sure I'm not taking your data with me, so you want to wipe the device. All well and good, but it's got photos of my kid's birthday last night on there. You are not wiping that device because I've not synced it or done anything with it yet. So there's some questions that you need to ask yourself. Yeah? And there are ways around this. You can have a secure container on there using something like Good. You can allow people access to certain things. For example, email. With Semantic, you could use PGP so that you could have the email being encrypted back and forth. You blow away the certificate, they may have the email, they just can't read the thing. So the question, first of all, is, do you need to manage them? And let's assume that you do need to manage them. The first thing you can do, and this is a free one from Apple, I was talking to a customer yesterday, he loved this, it's iPhone configuration utility. Runs on Mac, runs on Windows. You connect them up with a USB cable, you create a profile that maybe does things like turns off YouTube, stops them installing applications. Those are the nasty things, but it also pre-provisions the 802.1x wireless networking. So it puts the certificates on there, it pre-provisions their email accounts, etc. So they're the good things. And sometimes it's carrot and stick. Sometimes it's, yes, I will do these things so that you can use your device. I'll give you the carrot of I'll provision that device for you to make it easy for you to use it, but you need to give something as well. You need to give me the ability to wipe, or you need to give me the ability to say, I'm not letting you install every app you want to. So you've got to negotiate with your users how that works. But that one, it's dependent on a cable a lot of the time, but you can email policies to people. You can put policies on a website. What you can't do is force the users to use those policies. You can't do any auditing. You can't change things on the fly. And that's also true of the next product, which is one that came out at the same time as the new iPad, and that's called Apple Configurator. This is quite a neat tool for schools or anywhere where you've got multiple access devices. So you've got a cart of iPads, you bring them into the classroom, and you're going to hand them out. Because what you can do is you set up beforehand users on them. You set up what apps are going to be installed on them, and you then provision the device for the user as you hand it out. You essentially are checking the device out, and when it comes back, you check it back in and back up their work. So next time they have it, no matter which iPad they're given, it's checked out to them, and the stuff that they've been working on is on the iPad. You can also, as a teacher, pull documents off there that they've been working in if they're submitting work. In the US, and the reason that I say in the US is because they have a volume purchasing system for iPad apps, which we don't have over in the UK yet. You can purchase multiple copies and assign those apps to the devices without actually setting up the App Store on the device at all. So you can put a whole bunch of apps onto the device ready for the user, and when it comes back in, you just swap it out for a different configuration of apps because it goes on to somebody else. Now, I keep being promised that functionality, the App Store and the volume purchasing is coming to the UK. It will, hopefully it will do at some point. So that's a nice tool. The next one is Profile Manager. And Profile Manager starts us on to talking about managing devices without touching them. And this is built into Lion Server. Profile Manager is what's known as an MDM server, a mobile device management server. This basically is the core functionality that it gives you. You can set up a web portal. Your user can take an iPad out of the box, log into the web portal with a username and password, which could be pulled from Active Directory. They enroll the device into management, so we can now manage the device. And automatically pull down settings that are pre-configured for them. And as well as doing that, they will then have the ability to have settings pushed to them over the air. And that can be over 3G, over LTE, if you're lucky enough to be in a country that the iPads work with LTE, or over a wireless network. So that's the class of product called mobile device managers. And mobile device managers are available from a number of vendors. Last count, there was something like 26 different ones, but that was a few days ago. There's probably more by now. And they all have the same core functionality, but others will build on additional features. For example, Symantec have got a mobile device manager that works with Altiris. So if you're using Altiris to manage your infrastructure on your PCs, you can use their mobile device manager in the Altiris database, so you're doing the same auditing, pulling back information from the users, and plug that into Altiris. McAfee have got one that works with ePolicy Orchestrator. There are a number of standalone ones, such as Absolute Manage, that can do package deployment on Macs and PCs as well as management. And those ones will also manage other platforms. For example, Absolute, until a few days ago, did Mac and Android. They've now added Windows 7 in there as well. So there's a whole variety of ways to push configuration out to them. And once you go for a mobile device manager, you've got a connection to the device as well. You can query the device. You can ask the device what's been installed on it. You can do a bit of smarts around, are you roaming? Well, you're roaming, so we're not going to allow you to use automatic synchronization of data. But when you're back on your home network, we can allow you to do it again. And they don't have a permanent connection. What they use is Apple's push notification server. So essentially, they send a small packet, a small tickle, up to Apple's push notification server, which is the same server that something like the eBay app uses to tell you you've been outbid on something, and just sends a notification to the device to phone home. It then creates a secure connection back to your server, at which point you send a small packet of data to it to tell it what to do. And to put the profile on there. So Apple never see your configuration. If you're distributing certificates, Apple never see that. So, support. First question, who's doing the support? Because a lot of the times what happens when you've got Macs, you've got iPads and everything else coming into the business, and it's particularly if it's a Windows business, it ends up being the users that are doing the support. That may or may not be a good model for you. So the first traditional model, I'll call it, and this is probably how most of you are managing your Windows estates. You image, you use SAS or something similar, you lock and you control, and you do patch deployment. We can do that on a Mac. Apple have got a tool called System Image Utility that you can create master images with. There's also an open source product called InstaDMG, and that can be used to create modular images. And System Image Utility has some of that functionality in there as well. And with a modular image, you essentially create an image that's never been booted. So it's like creating an ISO, and you install everything into that ISO. But that's built by a script. So if you need to add an additional item to the script, you just plug an extra package in, and that gets run into the ISO, or you put some updaters in there. So you can build that clean image. You don't have to worry about things such as sysprepping as you would do on a PC, because you've got the clean image that's never been booted. Deploy Studio, it's an open source, well, actually I'm not sure if it's open source, but it's definitely a free product. That's a very nice utility for deploying, as it says, stuff out to devices. So you can boot. You can have a little database of what image goes onto which machine. You boot over the network against Deploy Studio. It looks up the MAC address of the machine and says, okay, as a result of that, you get this image, which is quite nice when you're having to re-image things in schools quite regularly. I was talking to a customer. They've built a really nice system of their own that hangs off Deploy Studio, that gets a machine up and running in about 15, 20 minutes. And as part of the scripting that works with it, it not only puts the right image for that user on, but it also creates a unique admin account password that sits on that machine that even the admin guys don't know. So there's a backdoor to it, and you have to then run through the right hoops to get that backdoor password. So it's quite a scriptable product. It's a very nice tool. I mentioned Absolute earlier on for managing iPads. Well, they can do deployment on Macs as well. So you can net boot the Macs from Apple's NetBoot server, or there's some open source ones that are available that run on Linux that allow you to NetBoot Macs off that. And then Absolute Manage can image the machine. It can do package deployment. It can do all the push stuff. It can image and do package deployment on PCs as well. So if you don't have a solution at the moment for managing your PCs, that's quite a nice one. If you have a solution, it may be something like Altiris. Altiris has got support for deploying packages out to Macs and for imaging them. And one you may not have expected me to mention, SCCM. Now, SCCM 2012 is going to have some support for iOS in it, but it's also extensible. There are some extensions from a company called Quest, and with the Quest extensions for SCCM, you can then manage policies out on the Macs as well, and you can do software deployment onto them. So again, you've got the same console that you're using to manage your PC estate, managing the Macs with the Quest extensions, and if the iOS support that's built into it isn't good enough for you, Odyssey have got a product called Athena that plugs in and allows you to do all the MDM stuff as well. So SCCM makes a very nice console for running the estate. For self-service IT, there's a few things we talk about there. The first one is app stores. Apple's App Store is a great way to allow users to install products themselves. You can install the software from there quite nicely. It's all done themselves. They don't need to, all they need is the admin password, which if they're doing self-service, they've probably got. You can also set up enterprise app stores for things like Altiris. There are alternatives as well, but with Altiris, you can go to a website and say, I want this app. Press the button. If it's authorized for distribution, it will go down to you straight away. If it needs approval, it will generate a ticket. Somebody will then approve it. They may need to do the purchase of the license or whatever, but once they tick a box, Altiris then does the deployment to the device. So that allows the user to do some of that support themselves. And on the iPhone and the iPad, well, again, the App Store, one of the benefits of that is you can gift as well. On the iPhone, you can gift an app to people, so you can do the purchase and just send the app to them. And with a lot of the MDM products, that's the one from Absolute, a lot of the MDM products will feature enterprise app stores. And those enterprise app stores allow you to have applications that you've had written in-house on a portal that the user can just go and download and self-serve there. So I'm going to get back to those 4 questions, or 4 statements that I said earlier on, about not being able to manage Macs, about Windows Server support, iPads in your corporate infrastructure, and support of Apples. As I said at the beginning, I'm not going to give you answers. I've not given you all the answers. I've given you hopefully some questions, and I've hopefully given you some things to think about. But the big question I say is all of that says who? All of these businesses, and I'm not saying that Insight have sold to them, all of these businesses have significant adoption of Apple products and technologies.